The two unique mitzvahs of Leyl Seder are the mitzvahs of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, telling the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim, and Achilas Matzah. And I'd like to have a closer look at the mitzvah of Achilas Matzah. The eating of the matzah has got in it some very profound and deep mysteries, which we'd like to have a look at a bit more closely. Maybe a good opening point for this topic is to notice a built-in contradiction in the text of the Haggadah. We start off the Haggadah, Ho lachmo anya, defining the matzah as the lechem oini. This is a pasuk in Sefer Devarim, where Moshe Rabbeinu says that this is lechem oini, the bread of poverty, the bread of deprivation, of affliction. And in that sense, the matzah represents the hardships of Klal Yisrael, the difficulties, matzah being a simple food fed to prisoners and fed to serve slaves without any embellishment, without any taste, simply the most basic sustenance imaginable, and in that sense, reminding us of hardships and difficult times. And as we go through Leyl Seder, we eventually get to Rabbi Gamliel. And Rabbi Gamliel is, of course, a Mishnah in Maseches Pesachim, and there the Mishnah says, Rabbi Gamliel hoya omer kol shlo omer shlosha dvorim ele b'Pesach lo yotze yidei chovaso, that in order to do the mitzvah of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim properly, you have to speak about Pesach, Matzah, and Morrow. So integral to the Sipur is not just eating the matzah, but talking about it and understanding the matzah properly. There's an element of da'as, of understanding what's going on with this matzah. So what does Rav Gamliel tell us? Matzah zu she'onu ochlim hashumma. Why are we eating the matzah? Shelo hispik b'tzeikom liYisrael shel Yisrael lahachmitz. That the geula was so fast, so speedy, that they didn't even have time for the dough to rise. The matzah represents the speed of the geula. Now, if you look at the Maral and the Mefarshim, speed here doesn't mean fast as opposed to slow. It means something which is beyond time. That the bechipozon of Yetzias Mitzrayim meant that the geula took place lemala min hazman, was beyond time. Time measures sequences of events that take place within the natural world of cause and events. But olam hateva, there is time. But in the connection that we have with the infinite, with the Ein Sof, the connection we have with HaKadosh Baruch Hu is lemala min hazman, is beyond time. It doesn't happen within natural cause and effect. The process of fermentation of chometz is something which takes time because of the chemical processes which are part of the olam hateva. But matzah is something which is lemala min hazman. It represents the geula which came from the Ein Sof. It came from outside of the teva, outside of nature. Ani v'lo shliach, ani v'lo malach. HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself intervened in human affairs and created Am Yisrael, and that was the matzah. So here's the question, a question to ask on Seder night. So what is the matzah? Is it lechem oni, representing poverty and deprivation and hardship, or is it representing the infinite nature of the geula, the speed and the simcha surrounding the moment of redemption? What is it? And here we come really a little bit deeper into the essence of the matzah. The Zohar refers to the matzah repeatedly as the lachma de mehemnusa, the bread of emunah. That in actual fact, that's what the matzah represents. It represents the ability that Klal Yisrael have to preserve our emunah under difficult circumstances. And therefore, eating the matzah as lechem oini represents the idea that even under extreme deprivations and even in circumstances of persecution and pogroms and holocausts and inquisitions and whatever it was, Klal Yisrael were able to preserve our chibur with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, our connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that was an unbreakable bond. And that is eating the matzah as lechem only. But there is another side to the matzah, and that is the matzah represents the geula, represents a world where we are given freedom, where we're given affluence. And here comes an interesting thing, that if you look in the halacha, the mitzvah of eating matzah takes place twice on Leyl Seder. It's the first bite and it's the last bite. The first kazayas of matzah is at the beginning of the meal over which we make the bracha, and then the last kazayas is the afikomen at the end of the meal. Unfortunately, for many people, the afikomen, they're already a bit exhausted or a bit bored or a bit full, and the afikomen is not really given its due significance. But you'll be interested to know that Rashi, for example, took the view in the Gemara in Pesachim that the main mitzvah of matzah is the last kazayas. That's the ikar mitzvah, is the last kazayas. The last kazayas of matzah in the times of the Beis HaMikdash was eaten together with the Korban Pesach. As the Pasuk says, Al matzah zumrorim yochluhu. It should be eat it. But what is the it? The it is the Korban Pesach was eaten with the matzah when? Al hasova. Al hasova means when you already had your meal and you're satisfied. You're not hungry anymore. You're feeling relaxed. You're feeling wealthy. You're feeling affluent. And then you eat the matzah. That is the last kazayas of matzah. And it seems that the Rambam also held like that, because the Rambam says in Hilchos Chometz Matzah that if one is short of shmura matzahs, you only have one kazayas of shmura matzahs, when would you eat it? Would you eat it the first kazayas or the last kazayas? And the Rambam says we keep it for the last kazayas, because that is the main mitzvah. That is the mitzvah of achilas matzah. And that's the interesting question. Why would we have a dual identity of the matzah? The truth is that if we understand this properly, this actually is at the root of why we have the custom of yachatz. We're dividing the matzah in half, into two pieces, a small and a larger piece, and we put away the larger piece. And what are we doing when we're doing that? We're saying we're breaking the matzah into two pieces. The first piece is eaten the first bite, and the other half is the last bite. Now, on a simple level, one of the reasons why we do yachatz is simply to make sure that we'll still have a kazayas of shmura matzah left at the end of the meal, that it won't get eaten up during the meal, so we hide it away. We hide it away to make sure there's still enough matzah at the end to fulfill that all-important mitzvah of afikomen. But in actual fact, breaking it in half is in order to symbolize the two halves of the dual identity of matzah. It's the matzah which we eat to commemorate Klal Yisrael preserving their emunah in times of deprivation and difficulty, and the last kazayas, and here comes the interesting thing, and this is maybe a side of the matzah which is more relevant in the 21st century, is, Baruch Hashem, we're living in a malchus shel chesed, and we're not experiencing the deprivations and persecutions of earlier generations, and therefore the last kazayas of matzah is maybe even more relevant to us, because it represents preserving our emunah al hasova, preserving our avodas Hashem, and our focus on the true values of Torah and avodas Hashem, even in a world of affluence, prosperity, and freedom. That is the afikomen. And this is actually, anyone who knows Jewish history knows that these have been the two great tests of Klal Yisrael throughout the ages. There has been periods of persecution and poverty, and periods of freedom and affluence. And both equally test our connection to Torah, to mitzvahs, to emunah, and to chesed, is all tested, both by the poverty and by the affluence. In fact, there's a beautiful remez to this I saw in the name of the Malbim in the famous Pasuk of Yeshaya, where Yeshaya is speaking about Mashiach and the fact that members of Klal Yisrael who were lost to the Jewish people will be returned. So the Pasuk says, "Uvohu ha'ovdim be'eretz Ashur, v'hamidochin be'eretz Mitzrayim, l'shtachvos l'Hashem b'hara kodesh b'Yerushalayim." And so there's an interesting remez here. It says, what does it mean, ha'ovdim be'eretz Ashur? So the pshat is Ashur, of course, means Assyria. But actually the word Ashur in Hebrew, Aleph Shin Vav Reish, means happiness, means prosperity. There are parts of Klal Yisrael, sadly, today we know a very high percentage of the Jewish people are lost to Judaism, Be'eretz Ashur, in the world of prosperity and freedom. V'hanidachin Be'eretz Mitzrayim. And there were others who were lost in a world of suffering and persecution. Right? The Matzah comes to tell us that Klal Yisrael we have within us that power and that ability to preserve the emunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the chibur with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, our connection to Torah, both the first bite, which is lachmo anya, and the last bite, which is the lechem hageula. And that is really our bracha for the Leyl Seder, the message that we have to convey to our children, to our friends, to our spouses, to ourselves. We reinforce ourselves every year on Leyl Seder, the depth of our emunah and our connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu is renewed every Leyl Seder, and that is the bracha that we receive. V'heishiv leiv ovos al bonim, v'leiv bonim al avosom, v'chein yirot.